it's going to be a physical game. It's going to be situational football. It's going to playing big. Not making penalties, everybody talks about how ramped up it's going to be, and but coaching that too, because anything can swing a game like this. So.
If you want a battle, go into now.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in, Maize and Blue Review. Good afternoon, Michigan football. I'm Dennis Fithian, ready to kick things off on this Wednesday with a look towards Saturday night. And, getting as excited as you can, still being, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 3 days away, 3 full days away when you get into the Saturday night. But, we'll get as excited as we possibly can on a Wednesday for Michigan and Michigan State. It's great to have you with us here. Welcome in the Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. We're presented by Rivals. It's great to see everybody out there. We are live weekdays at 1 o'clock talking about the latest in Michigan sports, and that has to do with Saturday night at the Big House, the Backyard Brawl, the rivalry between U of M and MSU. You call it whatever you want. It's going down, and we're here to talk about it with you. We take your questions. We look for your feedback, your opinions on the things that we're talking about, and other things that are on your mind, like that might be on your mind. I can't read your mind about what might be on your mind regarding Saturday night. So go ahead and leave a message. We'll put it up on the screen, and then we'll see where you're at with the game. What we'll be taking a close look at is the 23 schedule. This is out fresh off and hot off the presses. In fact, I guess we could push the breaking news sounder because it is breaking that the schedule is out. We've got a lot of rivalry talk. I've got refs to get to, officials in college football. I said I would talk about that yesterday, and here I am today paying off that tease later on in this broadcast. But we'll start with the numbers game, a lot of different numbers. And I was hesitant, certainly, when it came down to the non-conference schedule for Michigan this year. And, they had all of these, great numbers, and I get, Michigan's Twitter, putting out like J.J. McCarthy, the completion percentage leader in all the country, and all the other different things they're putting out there. And I said, I'm going to wait, to the Big Ten. But, you get one game in, 2 games in, and, how many games in before you feel like you at least have a sample where you might have a feel about if the numbers are even close to being real or not. But, I said I would wait till after the Penn State game. Now, Michigan played really well against Penn State, really helped. They already had some outstanding numbers to take a look at, statistics and analytics and all these different things. And then they went out and played really well against Penn State. It only helped there. But, I did say Maryland, Iowa, Indiana, Penn State. I mean, that's 4 games of a sample size to be able to look at some of the numbers. So I'm going to go through some of them and what they mean. We can debate it. Certainly think about whether it means anything or not. Heading into the season, there was a lot of talk, myself being right there with that talk about what was going to be big for U of M. And one of the first things that you would say, maybe the first thing that you would say, is how's Michigan going to replace Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo? Well, to this point of the season, Michigan, without Hutchinson and Ojabo, are averaging a full sack more than they were last year. Now, sacks aren't everything. Pressures, TFLs, hits on the quarterback, that all plays in. But if we are just looking at sacks at Michigan and, the tandem of Ojabo and Hutchinson were awesome, getting to the quarterback. But Michigan with 24 sacks this year, and they have come from 15 different players, and it's led by Mike Morris with 2.5. So Michigan talked about getting it done as a group, a team effort. It wasn't going to be just one or two, one guy replacing Hutchinson. It wasn't going to be 2 guys. It was going to be a host of different players. And they have done that a little bit more halfway through the season. That's a good sign for Michigan's pass rush, and there was a few times that during the year, like Michigan came out and was doing really good, of course, in the non-conference with sacks in the first game, and then tapered off a little bit. People were like, "Hey, you need a pass rush," and they've brought that pass rush, so that is looking good numbers wise. What else is looking good numbers wise? How about this little number from the Athletic that I pulled a couple days ago? U of M is allowing 0.87 points per drive. So 0.87 points per drive. You can look and see how that formula, I think it would get you, I don't know if it would get you confused, but you might be like, okay, we don't need any more of this kind of talk to see how they're deriving the numbers about points per drive. But, the formula's out there for people that like to look at the formula. So the 0.87 points per drive, what you need to know as a Michigan fan, or what you might want to know, is that leads all defenses in the country, all FBS defenses, the 0.87 points per drive. And U of M is just one of 3 that ranks in the top 10 in both offense and defensive points per drive. That's good. And the other 2 teams, they're pretty good too. They're up there in the top 5, top 4. Heck, I guess top 3 as we're talking about it. OSU and Georgia, Ohio State and Georgia being the other 2 that are up there in the points per drive. That's good. I was also looking at some tackling statistics from Pro Football Focus. I did not put those up on the list, but I can remember heading into the Penn State game that Brandon Justice, the senior editor at Maize and Blue Review, was putting out some of those analytics or Pro Football Focus numbers and just how good of a tackling team Michigan was, and they have stayed up there. That didn't drop off against Penn State. Michigan is one of the best tackling teams in the country, and that's good. I mean, how many times do you say in a big game when you're coming down, you start talking about special teams, turnovers, you say, hey, tackling, getting all the guys to the ball and being able to tackle. And last year in this particular game with Kenneth Walker III, Michigan had a difficult time getting that guy on the ground. Number 9, he broke a lot of tackles. And you've noticed Harbaugh has, when he's talked about the defense this year, he's mentioned a run wall that he really likes, the defensive line. And he's also mentioned, and this isn't new for coaches, they say it a lot about, getting 11 ball carrier or 11 defenders, 11 hats to the ball. Michigan has done a good job rallying on defense and being able to get to the ball. And the Pro Football Focus numbers say that. That's what Harbaugh wants. This particular game, when you think about last year, and there's no K9 out there. There's no K9 with the 2 dudes that they have, but still a point of emphasis. And, Michigan looking pretty good when it comes to the tackling. Now, these numbers are all really good for Michigan that I'm going to put up on the screen. They're all really bad for Michigan State. This is not me taking Michigan State and saying, let's just smash Michigan State to smithereens because they are a terrible football team. But when you look, yesterday we looked at the games, the Washington, the Minnesota game, the Ohio State game, and the Maryland game, and the losing streak that Michigan State had, and just how poorly they played and how bad they looked. They did. They looked terrible in those games. And they got the win against Wisconsin. And then when the big fat line came out, myself, I was like, wow, that's a big fat line. I think that's a little bit too high. But you watch the film, so you got your eyes when you watch Michigan State, you say, Michigan State sucks. They don't look very good. Maybe, that might be over the top, so they suck. But they don't look very good. And they haven't played really well. But what about some of the numbers when it comes down to Michigan State? Well, these are courtesy of Big10.org. And I just went to the conference games only. And it's 4 games, so you get a little bit of a sample size there. But so you look at the offenses that will take the field Saturday night in Ann Arbor. Michigan has the 2nd-ranked offense in the Big Ten. Michigan State with the 11th offense so far in the Big Ten. Advantage, Michigan. When you look at the defensive statistics in the Big Ten rankings in the conference only, Michigan has the 3rd best defense in the Big Ten. Michigan State dead last, 14th when you look at the numbers there. Not very encouraging on the other side if you're a Michigan State fan, except that you could say it's a rivalry and it's their Super Bowl. They only have this to play for and all of that. But just numbers-wise, it doesn't look good for Michigan State. I put some of the other numbers up there with the Big Ten rankings as well. Rushing offense in the Big Ten, Michigan, number 1. Rushing offense for Michigan State in the Big Ten, they've had a trouble moving the ball on the ground, have the Spartans. 13th rushing offense in the Big Ten. Rushing defense, and this is one that this is not going to help you if you're thinking, well, Michigan State, they'll be able to stop the run. Michigan State's rushing defense, statistically, in the Big Ten, dead last. Michigan's rushing defense, number 2. None of those numbers, if we are, and I say this all the time, everybody says it. It's a game of matchups. This against this, man against man, but, this unit against this unit. Michigan's rushing attack against Michigan State's rush defense is an absolute mismatch. All of the numbers that I've put up so far, offense and defense, they're a big mismatch for Michigan. That's why they're a 22.5-point favorite in this game. But it's a rivalry game. That's right. It is. It's a rivalry game. I'm with you on that. Let's look at, one more set. I don't want to inundate you with too many numbers. I sit here and start talking about too many statistics, and I'll lose you. But let's look at some more Big Ten rankings here to finish it up in the numbers. Michigan's rushing offense, number 1. Michigan State's rushing offense, number 13. Michigan's rushing defense, number 2. Michigan State's dead last. Michigan State's pass defense efficiency, and see how they work those numbers out. But it's basically, how well they perform efficiency-wise against the pass. Michigan, number 4 in the Big Ten. Michigan State, dead last. Michigan State has the worst rushing defense in the Big Ten statistically. Michigan State has the worst pass defense efficiency in the Big Ten statistically. That, my friends, does not stack up well. What Michigan State has going for it in this game is that it's a rivalry game. That's what they have going for them. Now, whatever. We've seen that before. If it's a close game in the first half, certainly in the second half, that's what everybody will be saying. It's a rivalry game. We should have known this. But if we just look at how Michigan State has played, if we look at how Michigan has played, and then we look at the numbers, everything points to Michigan winning this game and winning it handily. Everything. Now, that's what my eyes are telling me. That's what the numbers are telling my brain. So I've got my eyes and my brain so far. And I don't know, wherever your heart, what's your heart, because you're like, ooh, I don't know, is your heart is the one that gets you emotional about, the potential for it being close because it's a rivalry game. You've seen it recently in this series. However you want to look at it, heart, head, eyes, ears, head and heart you're usually talking about. And so the eyes, I think, have to do with your head. But there we go. There we go. Reminds me of, who was it? The Tigers catcher, Pudge Rodriguez, when they had him in the first year or two. And they, there were some beanballs. It was one of those games, both teams were throwing at each other. But the Tigers were really mad because it was the White Sox and they were throwing at the Tigers' heads. And Pudge came out standing there. And Pudge was like, you don't throw at the head because inside the head is the brain. And, it was like, oh, yeah, you don't throw at the head. Inside the head is the brain. All right, let's see where people are at least in this this first wave of the numbers, where the people's mind is at midway through this this rivalry week. Travis is talking about the schedule. He said it doesn't look that bad. We will get to that, Travis, coming up. Travis also mentioning the recruiting list attending Saturday. He sends a bunch of 5 stars and 4 stars. Michigan seems to be gaining momentum. I was looking today, Zach Libby on the Maize and Blue Review. Right at the top, the header on the Den is a running list of what's going on in terms of the visitors that are coming in Saturday night. It's always good to see Jason, who is a very pleasant Michigan fan, and it's always nice to see him. He's hoping that everybody is well. And right now I'm going to say I am well. More recruiting type. We're talking recruiting midweek. Richard saying the kind of recruiting happens when you're in the top 4 for a couple years. Well, let's keep it that way. Go Blue. Yeah, I mean, there's always a lot of talk about recruiting. And if you're in the top 10, you want to be in the top 5. If you're in the top 5, how about go for the number 1 class? And then if you get the number 1 class, it's like, hey, can you follow that up with another number 1 class? So it's always going. As soon as you're done with this upcoming cycle, then you're looking to the next one. So it's always happening. It's always going. One of the best things that Michigan can do, undeniably, when it comes down to recruiting and being able to get the very best players and all the players or the most players that they want, as many players as they can get that they want. Maybe that's the best way to say it without stumbling around. To get the most players that they want is by winning on the field. And then they have everything else that you would want, when you talk about the program and where it's at. But players want to go to the NFL. They certainly, every guy's different. And you want an edge. A lot of guys looking for the education. That's good. Michigan's got that covered. It's a fine school. It's a great school. I think it's better than fine. They're not taking a backseat to almost anybody when it comes down to that. But the facilities and uniforms but winning and getting to the NFL, if you can do that, that's right in there. Now, how the NIL factors in, that's one of these things that we're just getting going here. It's the beginning of that kind of thing, and something that I talked about all summer, almost every day. Jason, wishing that, hoping that I'm feeling a little bit better. Yeah, the family here, it got a little cough, and they had it for like 2 weeks, and I was just like, I guess my the way I'm taking care of myself, I'm doing pretty good. My immunity's pretty good. And then I got the cough. I was sick for like, I don't know, 24 hours. I slept for like 12, and I thought, I got this beat. And I was down for a day, and I came back, and I thought, I'm great. I'm perfect. I beat this just like that. Give it up to my immunity. And then, I kind of backslid a little bit. And I still have a little bit of a cough. But thanks for the well wishes. I'm getting there. Did that flu shot. Sounds like, Richard, that sounds like good advice. I have not as of yet, but it sounds like good advice. Third-minded, good to see him. Morris has looked great. I'm with you. And it's almost. Here's account 22 bringing it. This is the kind of, I like the picture that he has up on the screen. I like account 22. It's almost time for the reckoning. That's a nice statement. I like it. Perfectly placed, well timed. Let's do it, right, Steven? You're in there. He's about that. The rest of their defense last year was all young guys, and they have gotten better and more experience together. Andres is hoping everybody is doing well. Third-minded likes the tackling, and it's the key for the rest of the season. Ooh. If you were asking me the question, what's the key for Michigan the rest of the year? What would be key against Michigan State? Just be playing your game. That sounds a little bit too broad about playing your game. Look at it's Halloween, and we've got a black cat entering the chat. What would be he's an old timer, 15. He knocked the broadcast. He stepped on the mute button. I don't know how much was going on there. Where was I at? Okay, what's the key for the rest of the season? And like I said, playing to your capability sounds a little bit too broad. That's like one of those, like, scoring more points than the opponent. But a key, I think, in health, is one that, so stay away from key injuries. Okay, all right, we're checking that one too. Is it JJ McCarthy's another one that seems like, yeah, okay, you quarterback play, sure. Not turning it over, all right. I'm going to say a continuation of lightning and lightning. The running game, which is Michigan's identity, that you can play everything on this team off of. You want to pass the ball more? You can do it with play action if you're running. You can do anything you want. If you're running the ball, what it means is no, you're not just turning around and giving it to Blake Corum and giving it to Donovan Edwards. But what you're doing is you're being more physical than the opponent. You're controlling the clock. You get the time of possession. And when you do want to throw, you have an advantage. They're not able to shade two guys to both sides of the field. You pick and choose what you want to do in the passing game if you have a running game. A running game opens up everything that you could possibly want. You can exert your will on your opponent. You can take it away from them. You do it all. That protects your defense. You're more fresh. Or, for being out there, the defense is only, you got the time of possession, they give the ball back, and it just really takes everything away from your opponent. So I'm going to say a continuation of running the football to that point, which I use as a question. All right. Couple more on the feedback. And yeah, the Richard, the numbers are impressive. Let's hear some pads crashing and what's ramping up the legs. No, it's not Saturday yet. Just take our time. It's like in the off season. I do the same thing. I sit around and you got people counting down, 100 days. It's like, okay, would I actually really push the fast forward button and just go 100 days when it's the off season? Sometimes I feel like that. And I would agree that the season looks like it's moving fast and, and all of that. And yet the season's moving fast. And yet the Michigan State game is not coming fast enough, if that makes any sense. And that's what's going to happen with a bye week, every week. And W, you're eating those W's like Jameis Winston. You're loving it. You're looking at the standings and everything's going so good. All the colors are bright. You're ready to go. You just want to keep it going. Bring on Ohio State, all of that kind of stuff. And then the bye week seems like it's taken a month, before Michigan will actually hit the field again. So, wow, Account's on a roll. Account 22 is on a roll. He said it'll be a miracle if Michigan State gets over 50 yards rushing. Wow, I hadn't thought about that being a miracle. But okay, that's what the feedback's for. If you give your opinion or ask a question, Richard, like the fundamentals from the team. Special teams right on there. I'm with you. Andres is putting together the perfect Saturday. I kind of like where people are at midweek. What's the key to the rest of the season? Andres talking about what would be a perfect Saturday. Andres' perfect Saturday is the following. A 34-30 Penn State win over Ohio State. That's the noon game. I guarantee you, I will be watching that game. And 34-3 Michigan over Michigan State. It's not exactly how he has it written, but okay. I like how you're thinking. Some people throwing some scores in there, left and right, coming at you. Picks. Richard asking if stats ever count in this game. We talk about a lot of stats, and you say things like you can don't turn it over, or you want to score first. I mean, all these things. I say that in hockey. The big hockey games over the years. With the Red Wings, you get into the Western. Back when it was the Western Finals, Eastern Finals, Stanley Cup, and you get to the big games. It's like score first, and that's important. And then you don't score first, and you're like, well, was it really that important? But you say that. You always want to say start scoring first and don't turn it over. But yeah, so we talk about the numbers and don't turn it over, kicking games, special teams and all that. And they get out there and then, they play the game. It's something to talk about leading up to it, So that's what we do. You take everything, you talk about it all week long, all the different matchups, all the, backbiting and nastiness and everything else. And then you get to Saturday night and you just throw it all out the window, and then the players actually take the field and they will decide it. Speaking of the players, we had put in and talked about what Donovan Edwards had to say about not showing any mercy and, the potential of that being bulletin board material and all that. Two players spoke for Michigan yesterday, and the great Angelique Shengelis tweeted it out. And this is what Cornelius Johnson had to say about Saturday night. And I'll read the quote that's on the screen from Cornelius Johnson. Quote, "That game is not going to be won on social media. It's not going to be won with whatever is tweeted out there or posted on Instagram. What's going to matter is what happens at 7:30 on Main Street. That's what we're focusing on from the first play to the last." Now, that should get you fired up if you're a Michigan fan. Let's go. There's nothing matters. What matters is what happens at 7:30. That's what Michigan is focusing on from the first play to the last. Great job, Cornelius. Let's give it to him. Give it up for him. That's what you want to hear from your leader. We've got one more from a Michigan leader, and it comes from Blake Corum. Blake Corum was asked specifically about bulletin board material last night. Here's what Blake Corum had to say. Quote, "I just want to win. That can be my bulletin board material. I don't need them to say anything to get me hyped up. I'm just ready to win." Oh, Blake Corum. Cornelius Johnson. Those are the kind of people you like for your team. Spokesman. Nice job. Every time I hear Blake Corum, a lot of times he's out on the field after the game. He's had a great game, they're like, "Oh, Blake, you were great." And then you just sit back and you listen to Blake Corum, you're like, yeah, he's a great player. He's a great leader. He gets it done off the field, on the field. It sounds like I don't know Blake Corum, to listen to all the press conferences, interviews, and everything else. But when it was like the first, right when they started getting name, image, and likeness, like, hey man, these guys are cashing in. People are talking about, yeah, everybody's getting cars, and Blake Corum's down in Ipsy, handing out turkeys. I mean, this guy, you say he gets it, he's everything you want in a college football player. The only thing you hear, and it's not a negative, it's a positive. You hear the player saying, we're going to have to lock Blake Corum out of the weight room, it sounds like. They have to, it sounds like he wants to get up and work at 5:00 in the morning and until the end, so they've got to work on him, resting, and, he's listening to him and everything else. But, the guy's, he is everything you want from from being as a player and person. Like, you can do anything you want, put the different guys up there. Keep putting Blake Corum out there. I mean, this guy, it's very easy to root for. Everything. I don't know if you're like me when it comes down to Blake Corum, but, I can't get enough of number 2 for the Wolverines. Well, if you can't get enough of Michigan football, they have released their football schedule. And this is the schedule from mgoblue.com or UMich football, their Twitter page. Maybe one and the same. We knew who the opponents are, but now just seeing it all put down there game after game, we could take a look. Michigan will start out with East Carolina, the Pirates. Arr. So the Pirates will come in on September the 2nd next year. Then they got the Running Rebels, Vegas, Bowling Green. Soup will be back, Eric Campbell. Rutgers, at Nebraska, at Minnesota, Indiana. I'm going to say right now, there's 3, 4, 5. I think Michigan's going to win all those games. 7-0. Get me down. Put me on record, 7-0. And then the back half of the schedule, at Michigan State, Purdue, at Penn State, James Franklin's waiting for that one. At Maryland, Ohio State, and then I like how they put the Big Ten championship game on here. Get ready for December the 2nd. That's where it's at. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to say 7-0 right now. That's where I'm at today. The rest of it, I'm not really ready. I think Michigan, if you had to, pin me down on Michigan State week, do I think Michigan can go up and even things up against Mel Tucker? I do. So that has Michigan 8-0. Do I think they can beat Purdue at home? I do. 9-0. Do I think they can go back to Penn State? Ooh. And beat the Nittany Lions? Let's just stop at Purdue, at least for this second. Well, account 22 also indicating that State has terrible special teams unit. I know they have a good punter, and I know Jaden Reed's their punt returner, so that's pretty good. I do think I watched them just at the end of, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they tried to execute a field goal when the time was running down late in that Wisconsin game. That was it was kind of embarrassing, but I don't know. I'll take your word for it on that. But I do think their punter. I remember looking at him in the offseason. I don't know exactly how much and where he's ranking right now, but he was good heading into the year. Michigan fans thinking about getting some of the backups in the fourth quarter. Not a bad thought. Third Minded is saying the reason Michigan loses these games is because they play down to their opponents way too much and they get sucked into making it a tradition and not just going through them. Snot bubbles and pad crashing. Third Minded wants to see. Playing down to the opponent. No playing down to Michigan State. That's where it's at. Let's see. People putting their keys out. Richard says letting JJ play. Jesse Okie taking Ojabo like jump this year. I agree with that, Jesse. And you heard that in the early going, like not in the early going. It was Josh Henschke from Mason Blue Review. I remember him writing a story before Michigan even played their first game, like they had just got Okie back when he was known as IB Anoba. And then he, changed up to Yabi and Okie, so and all this number 18. But before he even played his first game, Henschke put out a story like he had talked to the coaches, and they said they reminded him of David Ojabo. And I was like, it's nice. It's nice to hear. I have to admit, I was a little bit like, come on, like, all right, guy shows up one week, the next week they're calling him, the next David Ojabo. I'm going to say I was skeptical about that, but he plays like David Ojabo. He, has that skill set. Great straight, great off the edge, rushing the quarterback. And, it wouldn't surprise me if Okie had a great game on Saturday. Okie dokie. Okay. Let's take Jason's key to the game. Jason says my key would be player health, positional discipline. Can't get caught up in the hype. Play our physical game and every once in a while reach into our bag of treats. A little Halloween pun. That's just the key. Is that the key for the rest of the season? That's just the key against Michigan State. I'll buy it. What else do we have here? We have a little bit more. Let's get to it. So I talk about this sometimes, the media being biased. You're a homer, who you work for. Do you really, besides journalists who are supposed to be impartial and not care about who's winning the game, and they got a job to do. And, everybody who, works and covers a team, specifically, if they're getting paid and if they're there, they do have some kind of job to do. Although some guys in the media just show up to the games and they're just sitting back. They don't really have a job to do. They got a bag of popcorn. They're just sitting up there eating the game, eating their food and watching the game. So there's all kind of different ones. But a lot of times the fans will be like, whatever happens when you see an opinion from somebody, you say, well, that person's a homer, or that guy, he's paid by the SEC. And we've seen that this week where we talked about Heather Dinich when she was putting Oregon at number 4. And there's really no argument to be made by Dinich, who, tried to put Oregon in there. If she, whatever credibility she had in terms of ranking teams, I took that and said she doesn't have very much credibility. I didn't like any of her explanations, but whatever. It doesn't mean like I'm always just going to be like, every time she gets up there, Feinbaum's the same way. Every time he opens up his mouth, the Michigan fans are all like, this guy. So the media's, fans all think that all media is biased, even their own media, but, they're biased towards their own team. So, but then the other thing that you hear from fans is that, the referees are on the take. The referees are cheating. The referees don't like us. And, for the most part, I hear that. And I'm like, you hear that in every single town. Michigan fans think that the referees, call bad calls against Michigan, and they're on the take against Michigan, and they don't like Michigan, and there's all kinds of reasons. And I don't think that. I think Michigan actually, in the grand scheme of things, gets more calls because they are a brand, they are a big name, and there's not many teams out there, right? Even as we sit here right now, there's not many teams that are a bigger name in college football than Michigan with Jim Harbaugh. Sure, Alabama, there's a couple that you could say, would be a bigger name. These guys are human. So that can happen. When Wayne Gretzky, the greatest hockey player, was playing for the Oilers, once in a while, Wayne Gretzky would get a call because he's the greatest hockey player of all time. You're gonna watch the World Series maybe on Friday. Justin Verlander will be pitching for the Astros. Justin Verlander may get that outside pitch on the black, regardless of what the he might get that because of the official. It's in their mind. It happens. So, but for the most part, I feel like officials that bad calls even out over the long haul. Yeah, people don't like to hear that, and I know there's been rare occurrences, Donahue and, that, officials, they certainly can make some bad calls, but like, I didn't even think that it was a bad call. It was a very close call. I know Michigan fans don't like to hear it. It's always a great tell for the media when I hear anybody that says they're the media and they want you to respect, and they're saying that, JT was short. No, a fan, I completely understand that. You're not looking for any impartiality or anything from a fan. But if there's somebody from the media talking about JT was short, you immediately know, like, this guy's just a fan. Which is fine. It's worked well for a lot of people. There were a lot of questionable calls in that game. It's not time to revisit that or anything. This is a long way to get to me defending the officials to getting to two things that happened this week. There was the Oklahoma State-Texas game. Oklahoma State, or I think that was Texas Tech. I put Oklahoma State up there. Oklahoma State played TCU. I think that was Texas Tech. They beat Texas 41-34. And the penalties, I've got this all mixed up because I got Oklahoma State and Oklahoma. The penalties, there were 14 penalties against Texas and 0 called against Texas Tech. Now, we know that Texas and Oklahoma, they are leaving the Big 12. And the officials might be, sending them, what it looks like is that they're sending them, they don't, they're not giving them any benefit of the doubt. 14 calls to 0, that is as bad as the proofreading that I did on that slide. Like, and what this, it tells you here is like, come on, you can't, even if you're upset that the team's leaving you high and dry out of the conference, you still have a job to do. You have to go out there and try to be impartial when you're official. You can't go out there and call 14 penalties on one and 0 on the other. And it's the same thing with USC. I watched a little USC and Utah. USC got a roughing call early in that game that extended a drive for Utah. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, They didn't say it on the broadcast. They were saying, well, it's ticky-tack. And I was thinking the same thing. And I was thinking, it would happen like it was, USC Utah. So it was right after Tua had the whole thing where, he was injured on the ground. So maybe that was a little, people a little sensitive, the referees towards that, chalked it up there. But USC, UCLA, Oklahoma, and Texas, they're getting the short end of the stick with the officials. And these officials are outwardly acting biased towards them. And if you're in the Big 12 or if you're in the Pac-12, you say, good, they deserve it. Screw them. I mean, that's what you say. And you get that, but it hurts the integrity of the game. It hurts officiating. It hurts how fans look at you. Fans already think you guys are all a joke, you officials. They don't give you the benefit of the doubt. They don't care that you're human and you have to go home. They want you, first of all, they want you to call the game, for their team. But you want to feel like, you're out there doing your job. These guys are not doing their job. And so here's my it's one of those things, at least to watch. If you hadn't thought about, Oklahoma and Texas and USC and UCLA not getting the benefit of the doubt in these conference games, pay attention to that. Anytime you're watching one, when you see a call, it's going to be in the back of your mind because of a game like this past week. 14 calls against Texas, 0 against Texas Tech. I know it can happen, but it just looks bad. It looks bad. And I would say if you're somebody that likes gambling, regardless of what your model puts together and how much you like, I love this game. Texas, are you kidding me? They're only, favored by 3 points. I'm taking them all day long. I'm betting $1 million. I'd say don't bet $1 million on Texas, on Oklahoma, on UCLA or USC. Wait till they get to their new homes. Because the officials, I think there's a strong possibility that they're going to be against you. That's my word on officials today. All right. Stephen has a perfect Saturday in mind. Let's see what he has to say. Stephen says his perfect Saturday would not have a Halloween party at 6, which would require me watching on my phone. Ooh. Now, wait a second, Stephen. Halloween's on Monday, isn't it? But you have a Halloween party. So it must be your kids. I get that. That's either a trick or a treat. That is not something. Can you get a TV? It's not bad if you're at a Halloween party that has a TV. But are you like you're trick or treating, you're trunk or treating, you're doing any other variation on going around to get candy outside where you're not sitting at a party where you have to pay attention. You want to pay attention to your children. That's a tough one. I feel for you there, Stephen. What else can you do if you're committed to a family situation at 6 o'clock? What you can do. Here's what you can do. You put yourself in a bubble. You notify every single person that's out there. Now, if you're going door to door, I don't know, can you go door to door on Saturday night? Am I wrong? Look at my calendar. Saturday. It's Monday. Monday's Halloween. So there's no trick or treating on Saturday. And if there is, you DVR the game, and the kids aren't going to tell you what's going on. They're not going to be looking on the phone, or you just tell everyone. It can be difficult. As much as you can make plans for this, so you don't listen to the radio, you don't watch TV, you just go to your party. You hang out with your kids. You do all the Halloweens. You have the greatest Halloween ever. But you notify everybody that might be around. I don't want to hear about what's going on with the game. And then you go home and you turn on the TV and you watch it in all of its glory. And you don't know what happens. And then afterwards, you go on the Maize and Blue review and you either listen to the podcast or you you watch the YouTube. Now, that's going to be very late Saturday. So I'm going to recommend, if you're a night owl, that's fine. But I'm going to think a lot of people wake up on Sunday like, oh, man, I want to relive the Backyard Brawl 22. Ooh, podcast. There it is. We'll be talking about it all for an hour about what transpired in the game. Let's go. And if you want to get to bed at a reasonable time on Saturday night, that's the ticket, Stephen. I don't know what your situation is, but that's what I would do. Now, the best laid plans, you're hearing somebody, you stay in the bubble the entire time, and then you're in the fourth quarter and you hear somebody say, oh, man, 38-7, I can't believe. You hear something like that, and you're like, darn it. It happens. You know what happens to me a lot, and I've had to watch games. There are not many things that I didn't like about working in radio in Detroit. The top thing that I didn't like is that my hours it was sometimes a little bit flexible, but most of the time I worked from 2 to 6 on Saturday in the afternoon and 2 to 6 on Sunday. So that was right during Michigan games. And at first, when Rich Rodriguez was there, when I started, I thought this is I can't. It's hard because not only could I did DVR the game and I would watch it afterwards, but it's going on and I'm supposed to be talking, and I didn't like. It took a while to get used to that. If everything in your life up to that point and in business surrounded your job, Michigan football, and then it's way different. I would even be like, why would anybody be listening to me during a Michigan game? Like, you should be concentrating on the Michigan game. But then, as some of those seasons went pretty poorly, I was like, I don't care. And then I got used to it. And then we started playing the games, and it didn't matter. I was on before or after, which I liked. So, but at first, it was difficult. I have a hard time. I screw this up all the time. I screwed it up last night. I can hit record. It's not that difficult on the TV. I just have to push a button. Pretty easy to do. But the Pistons game last night, I wanted to watch it. The Pistons and Red Wings were playing at the same time. I was recording the Red Wing game, and I was watching the Pistons. And sometimes I push pause on the TV. So I'm not recording it. But then I go do things and I come back and I've got some time built up and I can fast forward through the commercials. It's pretty good. I actually like doing that. But then what happens a lot is sometimes I forget what I'm doing and I hit like the button to check something else and it all gets ruined. So I'm watching like early in the second quarter yesterday and then I'm like, okay, let me check this other game. Oh, mistake. All of a sudden I'm at the end of the third quarter. So I missed all of that. These are tough things when you're trying to watch the game and everything else. So Stephen, I feel for you. He's looking for the brighter side of life. Andre's bubble screens are big. People want to say, can't we cancel? Stephen, can't you cancel? Michigan must not stoop to MSU's level. That's a good one, Richard. It can be difficult not to stoop. Playing down, unsportsmanlike, running your mouth, gestures, all kinds of things that you might want to do. Throat slash, wiping your face, smelling your finger. I don't know, whatever those things are on TikTok that they do. Wiping your brow, I think what it is, whatever. Couple more here. People looking towards the Ohio State game on Saturday as well. David taking a shot at the Buckeyes. Andres wants to see a 70-yard bomb. JJ to Andrel in the second quarter to open it up on Tuck and the boys. Andres, if I had to, you make your prediction, and I'm thinking 37-20 right now. That's my midweek prediction. Maybe I'll make a point or two either way, but it was what I first thought, and that's where I'm sitting here right now, 37-20. if I'm even getting more into the predictions, last year, Andrel Anthony had a 93-yard touchdown. So could I see a 70-yarder? Would I run that same play on Michigan State? What was it like? I don't know, a little 5-10-yard, and then an in, a little 5-10-yard in where you and up. I don't know what the play's called. 5-10 yards down, cut it over, but on a diagonal, catch the ball. I think just a little 5-yard out, 10-yard out, deep crosser. I don't know. Is that what it was? If you're crossing, that's just kind of a diagonal. If my memory is serving correct, he ran 5 yards and then started diagonally cutting up the field. Cade McNamara hit him perfectly, 93 yards to the house. Boom! Great play. I'll go with a 50. That's pretty specific. In fact, 70-yard bomb to Andrel in the second quarter to open things up. I'm with you. Andres, I'm with you right there. I think it can happen. You want it to happen, and I'm with you. Jesse's pumped to see what improvements the freshmen have made over the bye week. Will Johnson, who's at Colston Loveland, Derek Moore, Mason Graham, they will be needed big time to close the season. The true freshman impact, is that a key to the rest of the year? These guys, you hear about that, you have rookie wall or something, the freshman wall. I think there could be something there. All right, Stephen explaining what's happening to him Saturday night. Let's see what it is. His wife has her entire fall canceled, so she gets the bye week and Halloween. So what's that mean? She wants you. Where are you going? Where are you going where you have to watch it on your phone? I mean, you going out to eat at 6 o'clock? It's an easy. That DVR, you might be able to speed it up and be ready to go in real time at halftime. So, I don't know. Yeah, people talking about the referees from last year. That was a bad overturn. That was a very frustrating overturn last year. For those that, don't remember, in the second quarter, it was, I don't remember exactly. It was Ojabo and Hutchinson were in on the play, and either Hutchinson or Ojabo stripped Thorne, and the other one, I think it was Hutchinson, fell on the ball in the end zone. Touchdown, Michigan. Huge play. Wolverines would have been up. Or were they up 16? It'd have been more. Feel like it would have been over, even though it wasn't. And then you watch it in slow motion, and you're like, "Oh yeah, that ball's out." I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, his knee's not down. It looks crystal clear. I mean, I know you're a Michigan fan, and you don't have to be impartial, but if you just took a step back and say, I want to be really impartial about this and watch it, and you say, the ball's out. Like if you were a State fan, or if the roles were reversed, you would say, you know what, that's a touchdown. As much as you might not want to say it, the Spartans get a touchdown there if the roles reversed. And then to add on to it, you got Joel Klatt, who's like, okay, let's take a look at it. And then paraphrasing him, but he's like, oh, yeah, that one's out. That's a touchdown, Michigan. They're not going to be able to reverse that one. And Gus Johnson's like, yeah, partner, you're right. There is nothing, that they are not going to reverse this one. So both of them are adamant. And so that's not only that. Then they want to bring in the Mikey rule books, Mike Pereira, right? And Mike Pereira, he's over there. And Mike Pereira's like, let me take a look. No, there's nothing there. Nothing there. He's in. It's going to be a touchdown. That one's going to stand. So then they're taking a million years, which, makes you nervous if you're a Michigan fan. And then Klatt gives the over-the-top opinion, which, makes you feel good for a moment if you're a Michigan fan, because then he's watching it. Klatt gives because the call on the field was a touchdown. Klatt gives the opinion that if he was ruled down, that there was enough evidence to overturn it the other way, which makes you think, oh my God, this is, they're taking a long time because it's in Spartan Stadium, whatever. They want the TV time. You start thinking a lot of different things. But they're just they're just making 100% sure, seeing if they get everything else, and then when Klatt comes back with even if the call was down, then they would overturn it. So that makes you feel good, and then they come down and say it was down. And then I've never parsed the rule book exactly, but so you've got your foot and your ankle. And I thought it was the shin. And I don't know if does your shin start like right, when I think about my shin, I'm thinking about midway through my knee in my ankle. I know what a shin down looks like. That was the high ankle being down, just looking at it as your high ankle to an inch or two above that. Does that really equal a shin? That was a terrible call. It really was. And like I said, I've got my friend who, and yet they sound like excuses. They are excuses. He thought that, Michigan got hosed by the referees last year and Michigan won. He looks back to the pandemic season, which was a weird year for teams, and throws the entire season out because it was a pandemic year, including the loss to Michigan State. The year that there was the monsoon and I think Corum was the quarterback for Michigan and the Wolverines lost, they would have never lost if, there wasn't the crazy weather. Excuse or not. That's what he said. And then the first year, it was like a lightning strike. I mean, how many times can you count on a lightning strike? The fluke at the end. And he said that. Now, look, it's I've seen a lot of plays that you would say are flukes, like the last play of the game. It happens. It happens in football. You have to play to the very last play. I was watching to the very last play. I felt good, but I did not chalk that one up to a victory back in 2015. When the rain came, Michigan, they, it factored in, but, both sides, it's not like it stopped. It's not like it was, raining only when Michigan had the ball and then it stopped when Michigan State did. That wasn't it. Old what's-his-name was pretty good. Wasn't Lombardi then. He was pretty good, made some plays with his feet from what I remember there. Of course, Lombardi's the one, some dude named Ricky White, who I'd never heard of Ricky White prior to the second game during the pandemic in 2020, and then I never heard of him again. I've never heard of that guy. And how many yards did he have? Like 193 or something? 97? 173, 183. I'm going to stop. Was it 197, 192? It was an incredible performance. And then calls do go against you, even ones that you watch and you think it was crazy. It was crazy. It was a touchdown. Hopefully you don't get those officials, right? Is this true what Todd has to say? Officials are not as good today, college or NFL. These are facts. I don't know, Todd. I think we have a lot more camera angles and a lot more scrutiny when it comes down to the reviews and everything else. Back in the day, you'd hate the call and you'd say these guys are terrible. You don't like them. And the next thing you know, you're on the next play and you didn't have as much time. Now we have like 4 or 5 minutes and 4 or 5 people, experts that are all weighing in, and you go over there and then they get it half the time they're wrong. So I think we spend more time on it than we did back in the day. And, you watch a game back in the day and there'll be a really bad call. You're like, oh man, it's obvious. He stepped on the sideline. Well, the call goes against him. Well, let's go to the next play. That's what you do. You don't spend time, dwelling on it. I always wish that, my standard of irrefutable video evidence is where all 100 of people would sit around and say, okay, yeah, clearly he stepped on the sideline. Let's take the 30 seconds of all the views that we have. And if it looks close, and this is the whole thing, close to you and what's close to those replay officials, and each and every replay official's idea of close and irrefutable video evidence is different than the next guy. You got 100 video evidence guys in there, and then, they don't really have a uniformity of what irrefutable video evidence is. Are they instructed to do that against the teams? I don't know. I think I've got caught out here of some calls that are going, Todd, people are corrupt, money, people will get reported, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, well, unfortunately, eh, they are not doing themselves. When you go through there and you're the Big 12 and you're the Pac 12, and if you really do not give the benefit of the doubt, or you're not calling it straight up, basically, let's just say that, that's not only hurting you, the game, the conference, it's ruining the reputation of your fellow referee, and it's making everything go to, as much money as they spend. Like, how many times you hear this? I hear it every time there's controversy. Why don't they make these guys full time? Why aren't they out there all off season looking at film, going through situations, mock games? Why don't they get former athletes, guys with that are being trained all the time, so you can do the best that you can, working through the replay booth and different situations and all this together. Yeah, it would cost a lot more money and a lot of money at stake. So when you got part-time guys, and you got guys, I remember Gene Steratore. Gene Steratore would work a big NFL playoff game. You'd be watching it. It's like, okay, then the next thing you know, it'll be a Saturday game in, Ann Arbor, Michigan taking on Indiana or something. Gene Steratore's an NFL official. He's a college basketball official. I mean, maybe you should just stick with one sport. Make sure to know the rule book front and back and everything else. Because I don't think the Big Ten officials are full-time. That's all they do. And NFL officials, are they full-time? College refs aren't full-time. Should we check? Remember last year, look at the whole thing. Remember back in 2016, there was like, oh my God, this guy has a pair of gold pants, or this guy, was smacking Urban Meyer on the backside, or maybe it was somebody else. And then some of the local, media afterwards were like, this is an indictment of, because people were upset with that, the JT Barrett call. And, people are writing stories and, sending it in like, this is an outrage. Well, a half hour before the game last year, I see, one of these guys that cover Michigan. It's like, this is the same officiating crew from 2016. And everybody's out. Oh, this game is over. But you know how many people talked about it afterwards? Nobody talked about it. And if it had come down to any kind of hanky-panky or anything, boy, you'd have had some of these local guys going out of their mind about the conspiracy to keep Michigan football down. Take the referees out of the game on Saturday night, that's for sure. Well, we'll deal with November 25th when it comes around. But Saturday, don't let it come down. The officials can blow a bunch of calls. Michigan should still, when you look at the numbers, and you watch the two teams play, Michigan should win this game handily coming up on Saturday. How handily? That's up for you to decide. I think they're going to win it. They're going to score 37, keep Michigan State down 20. It wouldn't surprise me if Michigan got up like 37 to 10. And then in the fourth quarter, the game going to be an over State. And this is what I saw against Ohio State. It's what I saw in the last seconds against Minnesota. The game's over. So, you're emptying the bench and State, grabs a score or two because, they want to make it look better. I could see that happening. That's along with the Andrel Anthony prediction is, that's going to be my prediction too. It might look like Michigan's going to blow them out and win by 30, and then State will get a couple at the end because, it'll make them feel better. And you'll get that one columnist to say, at least they, left with their dignity as they were driving back up to East Lansing. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more about this game, this rivalry. Until then, I want to tell everybody, the Maize and Blue Review. We will have the post game coming up on Maize and Blue Review following. It's going to be a late one, as you know. I'm going to have to make sure I'm sleeping real good on Saturday morning. It's not happening. But the post-game live on Maize and Blue Review following Michigan and Michigan State on Saturday night. And if you don't like staying up till 2 in the morning or whatever it's going to be, let's see, 7:30, 8:30, 9:30, 10:30. It's not that late. Stay up till midnight. You know, when you get up, whatever your Sunday morning plans are, early Sunday, you know that you'll have the podcast there for you. That's what it's all about. We'll see you on the Maize and Blue Review, and we'll see you right here tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Until then,